Today I want to share a story about how a couple of years ago I delayed a product launch, I got a team very angry with me, and I set a new hire up to fail. Let's go. A couple of years ago, I was in charge of bringing a new architecture to market. It represented a very different way for us to develop software, and it represented a very different type of problem space for us to take on. I was handed this problem and I was asked to go and solve it. And I had a team that was working on the problem space, but I had this feeling that the team didn't have requisite seniority in some of the more complicated pieces of the tech stack. So I decided to hire somebody that could come in and help us up-level this thing. And this hiring process turned out to be some of the most complex and painful hiring that I've ever done. In part because of the fact that nobody on the team wanted this new person to come in. Nobody on the team agreed with my assessment that they didn't have the experience necessary to go and figure out how to do the thing we're tasked with doing, and they felt that I didn't understand or see how strong they were at solving this particular space. Looking back at it now, I still believe that I was at heart correct in my assertion that bringing somebody in that had previous experience doing this helped us get the product to market quicker and helped us build a better thing. However, by not considering what the team knew and by not being in touch with the more vocal people on that team, I made the entire process needlessly complicated. This is where something like skip levels come in. So in this scenario, the team wasn't working directly for me. Instead, there was somebody that reported to me that had this team working for them. And where I got my information back then was primarily through the one-on-ones with my teams, as well as the quantitative metrics and using the product. But I didn't necessarily have a structured way to make sure that I was talking to all of the folks on the team or the most important folks on the team for every team that I owned. Instead, I would talk to the people on the teams that I already knew and folks that I had a built-up rapport with, and that's where I would be getting most of my information. So in this particular team, I didn't know anybody well, which meant that I wasn't meeting with folks on that team regularly, and I couldn't see some of the problems that were developing there, and I couldn't deal with them. In a situation like this, arguably, as a good manager, I should be leaning on the person reporting to me that owns this team to be able to figure out if there are issues there and to be able to react to those issues. This experience, however, led me to believe that puts too much responsibility on the person on your team that's responsible for that space, and you need to augment the signal you're getting from them with signals from folks on the teams and other ways to see into teams. And so one of the practices that I've adopted now is that I do skip levels. And what skip levels are is just, one-on-ones with the folks that are 1 or 2 levels removed from you. I try to meet with the ICs and managers on my team on a fairly regular basis. I generally don't try to meet with everybody because I think the cadence that I would have to put on meeting with folks wouldn't make it particularly productive if I tried to meet with everybody. Instead, I try to meet with everybody over a specific seniority, to say every senior engineer and every engineering manager and everybody staff or principal or director or these types of things. I try to meet with at least on a quarterly basis, monthly basis, weekly basis, depending on their seniority. And by doing this, I make sure that I meet people from all of the teams inside of my organization regularly, and I get more of a textured view and I get more of an understanding of what's happening in my organization than I would if I was only talking to the folks that were directly reporting to me on a regular basis. It's a pretty simple thing, and I think a lot of managers do this, but I also think a lot of managers shy away from it because it's a big time commitment, and you're thinking, hey, if I'm going to meet with 40 people on my team on like a monthly basis, then that means that I'm going to have to dedicate 20 hours a month into doing skip level one-on-ones. Is it really a worthwhile investment? Aren't there cheaper ways that I can get this information? I would posit that it is actually a pretty cheap investment. For 20 hours a month, that is 5 hours a week, you get real insight from the folks that are doing the work on your team into what's going on in every part of your organization. And you can ask them questions and you can get insights into things that might normally never come across your desk otherwise. Since I started instituting this for my teams, I've learned a whole lot more about where we have weaknesses in our architecture. I've learned a whole lot more about which of the big organizational changes that occur inside of an organization get people worried and which aren't actually big deal. Where do we have opportunities? Where do we have problems? And in a way that hasn't been filtered through other folks. There are some perils with doing skip levels, and there are some things that you need to avoid. What I do is I have a document that I share with everybody that's going to have a skip level with me that just outlines my basic expectations on what that meeting is and what the value exchange is. In that document, I try to make it very clear that this isn't a meeting where I'm going to sit and give a bunch of direction and I'm going to say, hey, we're going to do this or that, or I'm going to try to upend any of the established decision-making hierarchy we have. Like, that's not the point of doing these types of meetings. I also try to make sure that it's clear that I'm not trying to subvert anybody on my team or that it displays a lack of trust for a specific manager on my team, but it's a regular and repeated practice that I've implemented for everybody. And that the value exchange is that I can provide to that person that I'm meeting with context about what's going on in the company. I can hopefully provide maybe coaching or mentorship over specific things that they have problems with. And I can give them another perspective on things that they're thinking about. And I can be a voice for changes that they would want to see and initiatives that they would want to drive. On the flip side, I can get all of the things that I've already talked about, the insights into the org, and I can build a rapport with the people in every team so that change management, when it needs to happen, is going to be much easier. Overall, for me, I found that skip levels are a worthy investment and something that I am happy that I'm doing, because as the initial experience that I shared demonstrated, I didn't know what the team was thinking. I didn't know some of the issues of the group dynamics. I didn't know that they had a very different view than I had of the seniority, experience, and performance of themselves. And by not dealing with that and by just trying to hire somebody, I set us back quite a long time, and I caused a bunch of problems that could have otherwise been completely avoided. With that experience in mind, skip levels are now something that's part of my backpack and that I do regularly. And I think it's something that you should consider adopting because it is really, really valuable. Thank you.